Hi guys, welcome back for 28th episode of It's a DARMAR, if you can believe it. And today I brought one amazing guest. His name is Urschel. I'm sure a lot of you know him already and you know his work. If you don't know, please do check it because it's freaking amazing, guys. I've been following this guy for a long time. He has been huge inspiration to me. So hi Jan, how are you doing?
Hey, thank you for having me on the show. I'm good. I'm
Hi
good.
guys, welcome back. It's my pleasure, man, to have you on this show because you've been huge inspiration to me, as I told you, and I love your work, Star Citizen stuff especially. Like, man, you're so good with this stuff. How did you
Thank you very much.
how did you become so good? I want to know. That's my
I was
question.
born this way. I
You
was
were
born
born
this way.
this
No.
way. Yeah, same here,
No.
same here. Man, tell me, what I want to know is how did your career start and where did it start?
Oh, I have. I actually don't know. I mean, I never really think about what I do currently as a not a like I can't say I don't think about it as a career, but it's kind of weird how I ended up here because I didn't go like I think I've told this story many times, but I didn't go straight from like an I don't know very like art-filled childhood into some kind of art university and then have like my dream job by the time I'm 20 or whatever. So it wasn't at all like that. I'm bouncing back and forth between different things. I think where it all started for this kind of stuff I'm doing right now is yeah playing too many video games and like watching too many movies when I'm not supposed to watch them. So I was typical kind of like childhood back then, like trying like digging out my dad's like VHS tapes and watching the Terminator when I should actually have gone out to the I don't know pool because it was so hot outside, but no, I was staying inside watching Aliens and Terminator and getting caught more than once by my parents who came home early. So that kind of started it, and then the internet came around in the mid '90s, and with that, access to all the video games that you could download for free because you didn't have any money, and that kind of fueled, I think, everything. And then I kind of got sidetracked a couple of times. So to speak, into once was like academia. So I have a degree in Japanese, and I went through the whole academic thing for like 5-6 years. And but I also kind of taught myself Photoshop. I mean, downloading it illegally in the I don't know in the '90s, and then learning kind of web design, getting swept up in the .com boom, and then doing that for a while. And yeah, so I was studying like hell, and at the same time like earning money as a graphic designer.
Yeah.
And then when I came out of it at the other end after my studies, I still didn't have a very good idea of what I really wanted to do. I got, of course, also the Nomen DVDs that got popular and tried to do them, and of course completely failed because what do I know?
Which
And
I have to stop you here and ask you immediately. Which gnomons did you try to copy? Because
I
I
tried.
tried. I tried Ryan Church. It looks so easy, man.
Yeah,
It looks
exactly.
so easy.
The matte painting from one from Ryan Church I did, and I think there were also some painting ones from Dylan Cole, also matte painting ones, and yeah, I tried to do them because I think I was always drawn to the whole like environment, architectural design, these kind of things. So I was never ever a character guy, and I mean still not, but that was always what drew me in. I think watching Star Wars and all this kind of stuff, all into like the world building, the vehicles, and all that kind of thing. I was really into that. And I don't know what finally made me like pull the trigger. I have no idea. I kind of got fed up. I was actually at that point already living in Asia for quite a while, and but I think I still was still doing graphic design as a main job, but I was like, yeah, I can't do that stuff anymore. I was like at that point already like 10 years into that career, so to speak. So I thought I'll change things up, and I actually looked up a couple of schools, and then at that point I was living in Singapore and found a school actually in Singapore, I was teaching that kind of stuff specifically, like drawing and designing for entertainment. And so I enrolled. I had
Sorry for
the Feng Zhu
interrupting.
School. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
it
Yeah,
was it
Feng
was
Zhu
a
School
Feng
of
Zhu.
Design.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I put all my savings into it. It's really stupid. And 1 year crash course. And yeah, at the end, I came out of it and got a job at Lucasfilm. That was also in Singapore. So strategically, everything was kind of, I don't know, something brought me to Singapore. I mean, first of all, it was my girlfriend, now wife. That was the main reason. But I don't know, there was some, I don't know,
destiny,
alignment of the stars. Yeah, exactly.
I truly believe in that. I truly believe in alignment of my stars, because a lot of times it happened to me. You know, something looked very stupid at one moment, and then the next it was like, man, the pieces are getting together, and I didn't even realize this. So I think it was your definitely destiny to be there and to do all of this stuff.
Yeah, who knows, right? I mean, it's about. I think it's I mean, whatever you want to call it, destiny or whatever, and it's like you're just prepared for when an opportunity arises, so to speak, right? I mean, if you think about it, I didn't like, if I didn't have like the job I had in Singapore at that time was actually working for a financial services company. So it was like more or less in finance. I was doing still graphic design, but I was getting dragged into doing more and more other things as well, which I didn't want to do. But if I didn't have, and I was making some decent money because, well, it's finance, right? So if I didn't have that job for that time, and if I didn't make that money, I wouldn't have been able to afford going to FCD in the first place. So I guess then you can also, like, yeah, again, it's I don't know, it's destiny or whatever, right? But you know, who knows where the next adventure will take me, right? Because I mean, it's far from over, so to speak, right?
It just started.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
you just started. I always say I just started. Every time I finish something, I say I just started. You know, and
I'm getting old and tired, but you know.
don't say that. Come on, don't say that. Your art has that very special feeling. That's why I like it. That's something that I can't explain. Like when I'm looking at it, there is something when I see your art, I say, man, this is on the next level for me.
Thank you so much.
And it's I don't know, is it colors, I don't know, is it but it's definitely your personality in the art that I see. And what I want to know is what inspires you, Jan, because your shapes are very different from what I see in the industry. Your lighting is also very different. Where do you pick up the inspiration from?
Well, I think I was always kind of really fed up with like I was so fed up with the whole like graphic design thing. But what I realized afterwards was that actually the graphic design and all that like self-taught training kind of helped me a lot in my current job, actually. And I didn't go to any design school for graphic design at all, so I didn't really have any of those principles. I don't know. I'm from Germany, and there's very strong design traditions, and I didn't have any of those because I never went to any school. They were teaching those, so whatever I picked up was just self-taught or like from my colleagues back then, and I think it still has a very strong influence, and it comes through, I think, in the kind of shapes and the kind of stuff I use. But what I look at for at least what I've always been looking at, I think, is I do a lot of photography, just for personal use, really. I've uploaded some stuff here and there, I think, later on, but that was always a big thing of mine. And architecture is also one thing that I really love looking at. And on the other hand,
Zaha Hadid.
Yeah, that's what everybody keeps on telling me. I don't really like her, to be honest. I mean, it's like it's a personal preference, right? I'm really more into the whole Japanese school of architecture, and there's a lot of like really strong geometric, clean lines, and they have an interesting sensibility of proportions and that kind of stuff. It's very different from other stuff. So, and I don't know. That's always what has been drawing me in. What I found really interesting. And maybe it's also because I tend not to play any video games or look at that kind of stuff all too long, and I'm also not really like a big fan of like the kind of actually the kind of stuff that we work on, right?
Yeah.
So for example, I mean, you have like you have your big project, and I mean that excites you personally, right? That kind of stuff.
Of course.
But for me, it's like the complete opposite. Like I'd love to, when I don't work on client work, I love to get as far away from the kind of things I work on for money as possible. So which is kind of maybe kind of funny, I guess. But whereas other people like tend to collect a lot of, I don't know, like the collectibles and that kind of stuff, and love to spend their days like playing video games and that kind of thing. Like I try to stay as far away from that stuff as I possibly can.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess that's just and maybe there comes a little bit of an influence where you say like, oh, I do stuff like you don't usually see from other people, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. You know, as you always feel like you copy somebody else too much, or like you feel like too influenced by people you really admire. But maybe there is something to be said about not consuming the products we design, and looking outside, right? Whatever that is, right?
Yeah, I agree. That's very smart, because when you're doing the same thing as everybody else does, even in your spare time, you can see it in the art. I mean, art is 24-hour profession. It's not 9 to 5.
Yeah,
it will never be. It's how you build your visual library in the head.
Oh yeah. Your brain never stops, right?
Yeah, unfortunately for me. and and you said you're doing different stuff. I also do different stuff. When I finish, I go completely different directions to inspire me, because I think it's the right way to do it. Because if you're playing the same video games as everybody else, you're watching same movies and everything, and only that, your synapses in the brain start connecting the same way as 90% of other
exactly
people.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's not always bad, right? Because everybody, I mean, it's I think the main thing is that the person who does it needs to enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if they enjoy it, that's totally cool, right? That's totally cool.
I completely agree. I mean,
yeah,
you have to enjoy it, because this industry is very hard, and if you don't enjoy it, you will burn out very, very quickly.
Oh yeah, exactly.
What do you think about the working hours in this industry as a freelancer? I know you're a freelancer now. I want to touch that subject.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's complete madness, right? I think if you work in a studio, then I guess you have to hope that they have somewhat civilized working hours, right? I mean, we always read these reports that, I don't know, people are being like, there's so much unpaid overtime, and you have to crunch all the time, right? I think it's very much just a reality of working on this stuff, on these projects. And that's just how it is. And I was actually hoping to get out of that by being a freelancer, but you know, be your own boss kind of thing, and completely not true, of course, because you work on even more, because you have, I don't know, freelancing is a tough thing, because you want to, like, you always have that fear of not doing enough, and you, how do I say?
You try to compete with yourself all the time, because you're not surrounded.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, right? But I think it's about there's always the fear of losing out, the fear of where the next job comes from, because I mean you never know, right? On a Monday or on a weekend you freak out because you have no more jobs or whatever, because the other one just stopped on Friday, but you don't know what's happening on Monday, right? So you kind of ruin your entire weekend for yourself, because you don't know where it's coming, where the next paycheck is coming from. And at least in the beginning, that was a lot the case for me.
Yeah.
So I really didn't know how I could like get around that, but I still kind of don't know how I could like make better use of my time, right? Like actually relax when I don't have jobs. Like that would be really nice for a change, but you know, it never really works like that.
I have a plan.
So
I will get married rich, and that's it pretty much. And my wife will support my projects, and we will live happily ever after. So I'm joking.
Sounds
of course.
great. Sounds like a plan. Yeah,
like a great plan. But
yeah, there's some like old, really old lady, really old rich Serbian lady, maybe
70 plus. Oh, she can be any nationality. I don't have anything against it. So, but yeah, it's now when you mentioned it, it's freaking hard because you're thinking about it 24/7. When the job stops, you're like, will I have it tomorrow? What will I do? And then you literally start thinking, well, 9 to 5 job doesn't sound that bad, you know, because it's always in back of your head. It's always in the back of your head. And you always have to be on your toes when the new email will come, when the new client will come. So did you ever learn how to cope with it a little bit? Because
no, not at all. I think it's just maybe it's an age thing. The longer I do this, the more I kind of feel like I don't care anymore. I mean, I still care where the money is coming from, but I think over time I learned that something's gonna come along. Like eventually something's gonna come, and you kind of get a feeling, I think, for the mechanism of like you work on something, you upload something on the internet, and then within a certain time frame, you will get some calls from somebody. That always kind of happens, right? I mean, if the work is good enough, and I guess it's up to you to really like how to say, like push yourself, like and because at home there's nobody who you can look at, whose portfolio who's like who you can look over the shoulder, you can get inspiration from, like you would, for example, do in a studio, right? So you're really completely by yourself. That's what it is, right? That's really it's pure like self-motivation. And that's really, really hard, right? I mean, I have no idea how you keep going on such a long project, because I'm the kind of guy, like I get really bored if I'm on a project for more than like 2 months. I'm like, I don't want any more. So if you keep going for 3 years on one project, I'm like, I just would die inside.
Well, technically, I am dead. You see, my body,
already.
But I'm dead inside. I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, we as artists always love the challenge, but since you mentioned it, how I kept myself going. I had a lot to lose if I don't do it, and the second thing was I made a big variety. And I remember you talked in one stream that since you took the credit and everything to go to FZD, you made yourself push yourself in a right direction, because you will lose everything if you don't do it right.
Yeah, exactly, right, exactly. All my savings were in that education, and if I fail, I would have basically be at zero again. Or I mean, I was also in a foreign country. It was not like I was at home and I could just go back to my parents or whatever. I would have to if I stop working, I have to leave the country, and then and who knows what would have happened. I would have lost a lot. I wouldn't have been able to stay together with my girlfriend back then, and I think life would have turned out a lot different, right? But I guess there's some kind of mechanism, I don't know, on the human brain, that once you really faced against all odds, then you kind of really excel at something, because I mean, looking back actually, right? Looking back at my early schoolwork and like I have no idea what has gotten into me, like, because I honestly was really terrible at designing and that kind of stuff. So I'm like, where did I get the confidence to say like I can do this? And looking back, it's quite ludicrous actually. But so I couldn't actually say like, oh, I would totally do that again if I look back at it. I'm like, I think no sane person would have done that, to be honest. But I don't know. Somehow it all worked out.
Yeah, you need to be a little bit insane to be successful in art.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
From my experience, we all have that part of our personality that's a bit harsh to ourselves and pushing and having insane ideas and so on. By the way, when you said what made you have the confidence, we have a saying in Serbia, and I'm trying to translate it in my head so it sounds good, and it is the one who thinks he can't and the one who thinks he can are the same person, meaning both sides of the personality in one person are all the time there. You just need to choose which one will do it.
Okay.
So
interesting.
So yeah, I think confidence that you spoke about, I think you pushed yourself to the edge, and I pushed myself to the edge. And when you are on the edge, you literally have to fight to come back, and you're falling off the cliff if you don't do it. So I think that's what happened. I think that's you.
Yeah.
What I want to ask you is, we have a couple of questions, but I would like immediately
to ask
one before we proceed with other questions.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, anytime.
So they're asking, do you sketch a lot?
No. Like, the thing for me is, right, I mean, I see people who are amazing at like sketching, like with like pencil, and they have this big nostalgia, maybe because they grew up drawing a lot or whatever. But I never had that. I didn't draw a lot, and so I have no nostalgia about pencil and paper and I don't know, like some kind of felt, like some kind of fountain pen when I draw, and like I look at Kim Jong-gi and I'm like, holy shit, like this is like some kind of otherworldly alien who can draw like that, right? But but I never had that. So I was actually like, when I got into the whole design thing, like that was with Photoshop, right? It was not like I was drawing and then I discovered Photoshop and tried to emulate what I drew analog. I never like that. So it's like I got Photoshop and then I was like, it's like, hey, what is this? Like, what can I do with this, right? So I never actually sketched much. Only when I was forced to, kind of like in the design school and stuff like that. That's where I learned really proper drawing in that school. Before, I had no idea how to do that. And these days, the only sketching really I do is I have sketchbooks, but they look like shit. It's completely awful. I don't sketch to make like pretty sketchbooks and like pretty sketches and like all the stuff that you see online where people like draw and they put like their pen next to it and take a picture for Instagram. No, I don't do that. So my sketchbook is complete garbage, and the only reason I do it is to quickly visualize the idea, the kind of shape I want, and then that takes maybe 5 seconds, and then I move on. And usually I don't even sketch in 2D. I just jump usually these days into 3D. I think for me, like I struggled, like that sounds now totally arrogant and stupid, but I struggled a lot with painting, like digital painting and 2D and that kind of stuff, right? I really struggled with that, and I still don't consider myself good with that. And I think it was when I got into 3D that it took me a couple of times to get really into 3D. Like I started like with 3D Studio Max and this like garbage program, and Maya I was forced to use for a long time in Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And so it was a kind of a struggle. But when I, on my own terms, got into 3D with I think that was with Modo, I think like 2012 or whatever. Then really I think things clicked for me more, and I felt like it's more suitable to how my brain works, right? And I was able to express myself better actually, and it kind of suited on to how I think. So I'm way more comfortable doing things in 3D actually these days than in any other way.
Yeah, it
That was a
opens.
really long answer. The
Yeah,
short
but
answer is no, I don't sketch. Yeah, go ahead.
we can do short answers, but the interview would be 5 minutes then.
Exactly. Yes. No. Okay. Bye.
Hi, bye, goodbye. Okay, but you know, as you say now you're doing the 3D, and that's what's fascinating to me is that how long ago were you studying FZD? Which year was
Um,
that?
I think it was 2010.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
generation from that period that is now on the market and showing their artwork. A lot of people who did self-teaching, like left the university and then did self-teaching, they all went 3D. And that's why they are successful now, because universities
Oh,
still in
really?
2010 they weren't pushing that much 3D, and they were like,
That's
okay,
true. Yeah.
it's separate and so on. And the guys that are the most successful ones are the ones that are using now 3D. There are of course the guys that don't use it, but they are the masters of 2D on the top level, you know. And it's very very interesting to me to see that you literally went to a forbidden path which universities say don't go. I did that also because I started with 3D. Many people know that, but I started with 3D and then I moved to 2D. So it's fascinating to me how you walk different paths. And I don't know if you understand. You were very brave to do that, and that's fascinating to me, you know.
Oh, well, I mean, I would say I mean, they were not teaching 3D in school, definitely. I think now they do a little bit, but I think I actually would not recommend, like if you, it's really hard to say not to recommend to use 3D because I use it all the time, but I think it's a bit different for students, I think, or well, maybe it has to do with I think how a lot of people perceive the job we do. Because you obviously have a foundation in design, right? What school did you go? Did you go to?
I
Did you go to
was
any school?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
drop out? Or I don't know.
I went to industrial design in Belgrade,
There you go.
and then I
There you
went to
go.
car design in Italy, Milano, SPD.
Yeah, yeah. So it makes total sense, right? Um, I think what people these days are getting confused with, right, is that when we say like, oh, we start with 3D and that kind of stuff, then they think that's what they should do as well. But and that will solve all their problems. But like I teach these days also in actual schools, not only online. And a lot of the problems I see is that people start using 3D and then they don't have the foundational skills to, well, first of all, make a good picture, right? Because 3D does not make you a good picture, right? It's just a tool.
Yeah,
But you need to have that foundation in design, in image making, and you need to also be able to fix the, excuse me, you need to be able to, like, people paint over their 3D files and then you see that they have no knowledge of perspective,
yeah,
or how a camera works. And I think that's that's just a big problem, that everybody these days wants to jump into, I don't know, Octane and just render out some shit and make it shiny, and then they have no no foundational skills. And I think that's where a lot of the, I mean, that's at least where I think online education still has not necessarily fully caught up.
yeah. I completely
So
agree. I completely agree. You're a graphic designer. I always say to people, you were a graphic designer. You're not now, but I always say to people that graphic design is one of the hardest profession to be in, because
oh yeah.
making a good logo, it's the super simple stuff, and you need to make it look good with simple moves and stuff like that. Everybody can design a car. I always say that. Trust me, it will look maybe bad, but everybody can design that. But making a logo, that's where the fundamentals of design that translates to any design, that's where it is. And I think that's what made you so successful with 3D and everything when you moved to. So I think that was very important for you, and then you knew the logic and you knew the fundamentals and everything, and you started using them. But when we are speaking about that, I want to talk with you. I know you have learned squared class and you gumroad and you teach. How is that going? And I want to know, what is the thing that you perceive the most in the students when you are teaching? What is the biggest problem? What is the biggest advantage? Because a lot of students are listening and maybe they should apply some stuff so they become better.
Well, the whole teaching thing, I think, started as kind of like as finding a different kind of outlet to just doing client work, just to shake things up and for myself as well to clarify. I think what helps. How you can help yourself when you teach, when you learn about teaching, is that you can really learn about your own processes and clarify and figure out like how you do things and how your brain actually works. Because I think most of the time nobody really thinks about that. They just do the work. But once you have to formalize it, it actually is quite eye-opening, I think. So what I see in the students, so now I'm teaching an online course, or I taught a couple of online classes with Learn Squared, and I'm also teaching in a school, in a physical school. And yeah, I think what I already mentioned just now is that a lot of times I see that even after an extensive program, that students are just lacking the fundamentals, whether it is like color, whether it is perspective. I mean, all these things are very technical things that people can learn, right? Of course, they also have, in most cases, very bad design skills. But for that, I'd say, because people do ask me, like, how do you become a better designer and that kind of stuff? I mean, for me, I always say that, yes, you can learn like a few principles. Again, the technical stuff has to be there, has to be good. Without the technical aspect being solid, you cannot produce good stuff, I think. But you also, like, the design thing is the whole, like, where life experience comes into it, right? And what you have seen, what you have absorbed, what you have exposed yourself to, how much attention you pay to things around you, right? Because I feel like every good designer is by nature very curious and has been growing up being very curious about the world around him, right? And pretty much everybody is like that. And you find these common traits of I don't know, exploring the forests and whatever you have, right? I mean, not to say that you have to have a good forest to be a good designer, right? But I think it's always about going out and experiencing things. And I mean, if you play video games then all day long, then you don't experience really anything. Not to, like, of course, video games can play a big factor, right? Like, that's what made me interested in this industry, right? So it's can't say like, oh, don't play video games, right? Because it can serve as a huge inspiration. But I think you also need to have, I don't know, that inner urge to learn about new things and well, at the end, create new things, right? Like a lot of people, like. A lot of students say like, oh, I don't know what to draw. Like, I don't like, I don't have any ideas right now, which as a designer is pretty much the worst thing that can happen to you, right?
Yeah.
But when that happens, right, it's very curious as to why that would happen. Like, because if design is truly what you want to do with your life, like at any moment, right, your brain should be exploding with like millions of ideas, right? If you already while you're a student have no clue what to do, then it's honestly like it's hard to say actually, but I'd almost say like you have to question if you really want to be a designer, or if you feel like you pursuing something else by looking at this art online maybe and getting like, it's like, oh, this looks better than a desk job, like an office job in a bank or whatever, right? But what you keep forgetting is that, I mean, this thing we do is still a job, right?
A desk job, a very desk job.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have a fat ass and bad health if you don't look after yourself.
Yoga in 22 to fix your back. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the thing is though, right? You need this never-ending drive to create this. Like it has to be something that keeps you up at night, that you really want it really, really bad. Because that kind of drive will give you the energy to go through the really tough times that you're going to have if you want to be an artist, a designer. Right? Because there's going to be so many hard times where for 5 to 10 years, you're just going to suck so bad. But you also want it so badly that that this is what's going to push you through all these hard times of like self-doubt and stuff. If you don't have that, you're just going to crash and burn in the first year and never going to get up again. And so you have to ask yourself, like, what makes you pursue this thing, this career, right? Why are you doing this? Is this truly what you want to do with your life, right? Because I mean, maybe it looks cool from the outside, but you have to be really honest with yourself, right? Because you're gonna work too many freaking hours on this, right? And maybe your time is spent with something else, and that's not bad, right? Maybe you're gonna be a freaking kick-ass lawyer, right? Do that, right?
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, it's good, right? So
you need to find yourself.
Sorry, yeah.
No,
that's part of it, right? That's part of it, right?
It's a great advice, because many people in the industry, they start with something. Oh, I'm gonna do this, so I enter the industry, and then they enter the industry and they never go where they wanted to go, because all of a sudden there is money. People start giving them, of course, the job that they started doing, because you're not gonna become a character artist if you started as an industrial designer, unless you changed, and they became miserable. And what you said, you need to make yourself hungry, really hungry. Like when you're hungry, you need to eat. If you don't have food, you need to find the food. I think every designer went through that. It doesn't mean that you don't, the money has to be the main motivator. It can be something else. You can be spiritually hungry. You can be with the environment around you hungry and other stuff. But some hunger has to be there. Some kind of hunger that you don't want to come back to, you know. At least that's my experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's going to keep you going.
Yeah, every time you remember I was there, I was hungry. And a lot of people confuse this. I mean, hunger is a horrible thing when you don't have money, but soul hunger is even worse. And I see so many people deprived in the world from the soul, because they're not pursuing the careers they want, they're not pursuing the life they want, they're pursuing the money. And it's a vicious circle. Yeah. It's a vicious circle, and the soul suffers so much. It suffers so much. Yeah.
And on top of that, if you go into this industry to make money, to get rich, then you really can't be helped, because it's probably the worst idea, the worst choice of job to do. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely, if you were a doctor working this much, you would be a billionaire, literally. Like.
Exactly, right.
Like.
It better be.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. It's a strange thing, but the things are getting better. The artists are getting more recognition, and that's what nice. In the next 5 to 10 years, I think it's gonna be really, really good. Really, really good. I hope, actually, not think. I hope in this case. So yeah, what people are there is a question, and immediately, since we talked about you lecturing, guys. By the way, I posted Jan's course on the chat. If you want to check it out, it's a really good course, and if you enjoy his work, you should apply, because he can teach you a lot of stuff. And what I wanted to ask is, we have a question here. Hi Marcus, he is asking, did you pick up 3D as you went along with art, or it just happened? I think we answered that question. Sorry, my bad. Any advice for how to design graduate, how to get into concept art field? That's the question.
Sorry, what kind of graduate?
Car design.
Car design.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a car designer. Maybe Darko should answer that. No, I know a lot of. I have a lot of friends, especially German friends, who started doing transportation design, and then got into I mean, there's many examples, right? And you should maybe reach out to them, right? Like notably, right? Like Daniel Simon,
Yeah.
Patrick Faulwetter, Vaughn Ling, Benjamin Last. They're all from transportation design, right?
Yeah.
And made the jump into thing. And I think they all bring something very unique to the table that they have learned in that course, and that really makes them stand out. I don't have any particular, like, I think like recommendation on what to do. I mean, what I heard from conversations with them is that it was all up to them to push their portfolio to be more towards entertainment focus, right? And they all did that in their after hours, in the evenings and the weekends, right? Like Benjamin Lars was like working at, I think, Volkswagen or Audi. And at night he had to do sketches of like futuristic vehicles and other stuff, and had to teach himself how to like make like production paintings and that kind of stuff. And then eventually he got a chance to work for, I think, on movies. So now I think he's working with RLM on stuff. And Daniel Simon's story is also very, very famous. Like he was the really senior designer with like Bugatti and that kind of stuff, and then he, on his own time, made a book, right? He made a book. I mean, that sounds like what you do, right? So he made a book.
He was a huge
printed it,
inspiration.
and it was like
He was huge, yeah.
It was an incredible book, right? Incredible, and he's an incredible designer. And then he just took that thing and went to Hollywood and said. Went to some big names and like slapped it on the table and said, "Look at that shit," and they were all going like, "Holy fuck, who's this guy?"
Yeah.
And now like he's one of the biggest names, right?
From zero to hero, literally from zero to hero. I mean,
he was pretty awesome before, right?
Yeah, he was a great designer. Volkswagen School.
Right, and I mean he worked on the Veyron, I think, on the Bugatti Veyron. I mean, holy shit!
Yeah.
And now he's doing everything, right? He's doing like his car stuff and entertainment and whatever comes along, right?
Yeah, insane. Like, yeah, he is a different league. I always say that there is high class designers, and then there is Daniel Simon. Daniel Simon.
That's crazy.
What does Daniel Simon do? He does Daniel Simon.
Exactly, right. He's his own brand, right? He's his own brand.
Yeah. True,
and that's really aspirational. I think that when people say your name, they immediately know exactly, or you can look at a design and it's like, okay, that's him, right? And that one of the most instantly recognizable, I think. Along with like Sid Mead and these kind of guys. So yeah.
Beautiful design, simple yet so complex.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? That's the simplicity of the shapes is like crazy, yeah.
Yeah, I should bring him to stream. I will try to do that, guys, soon, because I would really like to speak with him.
That would be awesome, yeah. But I'm sure he's like so crazy busy. I think.
1 hour of the day he can find it.
That's what you say.
Yeah. That's what I hope. Like in my brain, I'm trying to call him through this stream. So, yeah, he is different league, man. I love his work. I see you do also, except for environments, you do vehicles, and they're very fun. They're very fun and interesting. I like them. So, inspiration, architecture, I can see that in your vehicles, and I see how it's translating to the vehicles, some shape, and it's very different from most of the stuff, again, I see. At the moment, I'm looking at the Captain Marvel Quadjet development. It's very, very
actually
cool.
It's a funny thing, yeah. That was the initial design was actually done by somebody else, and then I was tasked to like take it further, right? It's really interesting, but yeah. I'll try to bring my influences in. I don't do very much, I think, vehicle stuff actually, but yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, actually, I wrote it there that Josh worked on that. Yeah. But yeah, I just still try to bring something of myself into that design, and I think the end design was like a hybrid of, I think, both of our stuff, and. Maybe that's a good example of like how collaborative the process working on movies and games is going to be, because you're going to get somebody else's design to paint over, or you give your design to somebody else to finish. So it's a good lesson that maybe you don't design something from beginning to end, and that's how it's going to end up in a movie. It is not like that at all. Everything is a collaboration of like dozens, even hundreds of artists. When it gets taken from a 2D painting into like a full like 3D vehicle for a final shot, right?
Yeah.
There's so many people who touch that. So yeah, that's maybe like a good reminder to not fall in love with your work, because you have, unless you're the guy who calls the shots, you have zero control over what happens to your design. Yeah. I mean, you with your book, you are actually producing the final piece, right? So you actually can control how it looks like, at least in the book. Which is good, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, let's say hypothetically, right? You sell the rights to your book to somebody else, to, I don't know, let's say Netflix buys your book because the idea is so awesome, right?
That would be awesome. Oh my God. Okay.
Right?
I'm just daydreaming. Okay.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, right? At that point, you have to let go of it, because it's going to be turned into something else. Yeah. And they might change it completely. And I mean, you will have to be okay with that, I think.
Yeah. It's painful, right, to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but so that's what you have to do, right? As soon as somebody else gets involved, right? Yeah, things will change, right? Especially like, I mean, maybe you're like super rich, like maybe like a billionaire, and then you can finance your own movie, and do it everything exactly how you want it. But yeah. I mean, that might also be a very bad idea, you know. There's something to be said about feeding off the collaboration with other artists and creating something greater than what you alone could do, right? So who knows, right?
Yeah, different personalities, they evolve the image always, like
exactly.
If the director is good, the director is always the main man there, where he is leading everything. Like the director is good, he's gonna support everything that's good in that project, and it will go smooth. Sometimes there will be bases where you fall, but eventually it will go good. That's my experience so far working on the projects. I wanted to ask you, so you worked both on games, movies. Can you tell us what is the biggest difference for you in those two fields? Because still they're overlapping, but still they are not the same. So people sometimes get lost. What is what?
I don't know. Is there really a difference? I mean, from a technical point of view, yes, there are a few differences, because if you work on a movie, there's often the case that you're working on a set piece or something that actually has to be manufactured. And there's a lot of real world constraints that you have to deal with, like the soundstage is this big, so we cannot make your design like longer than, like the spaceship corridor cannot be longer than, I don't know, 20 meters, right? So you have to design something within those constraints. Whereas for video game, usually you can go a bit crazier. Like, yeah, sometimes you have like a gray box, like the blockout, the gameplay blockout, and then you have to design something within that. But usually there's a lot more freedom in video games, and often they're actually a lot more fun to work on, like rather than movies. But you know, it's always good and bad. It's not like one is unequivocally better than the other one. It's usually the thing is with movies is that they have a wider reach and are for some reason usually in higher regard than video games. I think still a lot of people, like the general public, still kind of looks down on video games a little bit, and it's more like of a geeky kind of thing. Whereas like everybody gets like big googly eyes when you say you work on movies, right? Even though like, I mean, like how is a Marvel movie like different in that regard, right? It's not.
And it has a less budget than the game design, which is funny, you know?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Like it's not, but it's 10 times less, something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the thing is though, where it happens, the difference is, I think, a bit in the design language you use. There's such a thing as a gamey design, a gamey look, and there is a different set of rules, almost a different set of design rules that come into play for if you work like on like feature films. And you use slightly different shapes, you use different proportions. It overall feels a bit more refined in general, what you do. And for video games, it can often be, it just looks chunky, it looks weird, like because, I don't know, for example, like a doorway in a game needs to be a lot bigger and a lot wider for the player to be actually able to navigate through it. Right, with the camera and the controls. Like if every door in a video game was like a real size door, then that would just be completely unplayable. Whereas you don't, like for that kind of stuff, you don't have to actually worry about for a movie, right? You use the measurements of like a normal doorway and apply that to your design. So that makes the design in the end look completely and feel completely different. So that's a lot of what you deal with, I think. In terms of like just working on it, it's really the same. It really depends again on the most important thing is really people, the team you work with, and you can't really say that one is better than the other because it depends entirely on the kind of people you work with. It's really all about that. And that it makes always a difference between a terrible project and a fun project, I think.
I see. One more question we have. There now the 3D artist who is focused on production wants to start into concept design, but I think it's all the same question. They're asking how to break through in the concept design. So I think the answer is the same, guys, as for automotive designer. Jan explained you need to push your boundaries and you need to do in your free time this kind of stuff if you don't have the money and learn. So yeah, Jan, I want to ask you one question, which is I think is gonna be very interesting. So you make these kind of environments and they are very cool. And I want to know, what is the thing that you put the most effort in to learn? Was it the lighting? Was it something with modeling? Or what was the thing that you put the most effort to make these kind of pieces?
I think the lighting is one of the most important aspects. And what I usually try to do is that I try to find the simplest way of doing something and to see if I can get away with it. Because a lot of people, I think, mistake realism for just adding a shitload of detail. And that's what's gonna make something look real, but it's really not important how much detail there is. It has more to do with the right proportions. The lighting is very, very important, and material indication. Those things have way better impact, and they can make something really, really simple look incredibly realistic. So adding more and more detail it has no impact on realism. So I'm always trying to see, because like I said before, I get fed up with stuff really quickly. So I try to see like what's the minimum thing I can get away with.
Okay.
So I can call it finish and move on to something else. That's kind of how I operate. But I think the most important thing, what people should learn, is really really good lighting. And with that, it does not always mean like realistic lighting, it depends on what you want to learn. But I think learning about cinematic lighting is very, very important to understand how movies are lit. Since we deal a lot with that, and I think a lot of games are trying to be more and more cinematic. I think it's really about learning how movies are lit. And if you look at modern like rendering packages like Octane or whatever, right? It's unbiased. So it really works like in real life. So you can actually like build yourself setups of lighting rigs or whatever that would work just like how a movie is lit on a real stage, and you can achieve similar results with that, right? So I think learning about lighting techniques and ways how photographers or cinematographers are lighting their sets is incredibly useful. I did a lot of like I like naturalistic lighting a lot, so I actually started rebuilding a lot of photographs that I saw and that I liked, and I tried to rebuild it to see if I could get a similar effect. And I think that really helped me a lot to understand how to best put scenes together.
I see.
So I think that's I think something people should look at.
Yeah,
should look at it more.
Your lighting is freaking awesome. I love it, man. There is so much personality, not like look. For example, I'm showing the mega city thing, and there is so much dark colors, and you're getting away with it. That it is insane because
exactly right.
Yeah, because you know how to do it. I mean, you.
It's all just one. It's just one texture.
Yeah, and it's freaking insane. Look, guys, like this is like next level stuff for me. Like I love it. I like this here passage of the light. Great stuff. Great stuff. So we are wrapping up soon, but before we wrap up, I want to ask you: will we see you anywhere around the world on any conference? In 2019, 2012, I'm back in 12.
I'm very bad getting out of the house. I have two small kids, so and I live quite far away from where all this stuff is happening. So it's always a considerable effort and expense to like go to Europe or go to the States. So I don't usually travel that much. Nothing planned this year, but I'm really trying to go to Lightbox next year. So a Lightbox in Los Angeles, I think it's in September, right? So I'll try my best to be there and meet everybody. But who knows, right? Who knows? Anybody who wants to invite me, please send me an email.
Please, guys, if you want to invite Jan, invite me also, please. Okay.
Yeah, we only come together. Okay. If you get one, we have to always invite the other one.
Yeah.
But you're like in Europe, so
I'm in Europe.
It's easier to get around.
True. There is a lot of events happening here, but I think that public would like to hear what you have to say, because today I really enjoyed this interview. So much smart stuff said and so much cool stuff. So I think that you'd be a perfect candidate for anybody to call you. I'm sure that people would enjoy it a lot. And
well, we'll see. Who knows, right? Who knows what the new year brings, right?
Yeah, who knows?
2019 was good, so let's move forward.
The 2020 has to be even better.
Yeah, definitely, right? Okay. Always optimistic. Yeah. Cool.
I'll put your Bano Defender, this image that I love the most, that influenced me a lot. I will put it for the end here, and yeah. So guys, please hit the subscribe button, because we are bringing more guests cool as Jan. Jan, thank you for coming. I really enjoyed this interview. We talked about a lot of cool stuff, and I hope that you will have a lot of new great projects in your career.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. And let's have your book soon, okay? When is it coming out?
It's 2020. It's 2020. The date is I will be releasing it very soon, the date, because
damn, that's soon, man. That's like a month.
The book is done, man. The book is done. We are organizing it now. Spiridon has taken it. Copywriter is fixing it. It's ready, man. It's ready. Everything is ready. So yeah. So I can maybe show you something after the stream if you want to see.
Sure. So, secret stuff. Don't accidentally stream it, okay? Don't accidentally stream it.
Trust me, wouldn't surprise me if I did it accidentally. So yeah, have a great day, guys. Have a great night. And one more time, thank you for coming, and thank you, Jan, for coming. I will see you also.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.